All right, welcome back to the channel. So, Gervonta Tank Davis and Leo Santa Cruz is coming up and on a pay-per-view. And James Toney, legendary fighter James Toney, gives his opinion about what will happen in that fight, and it's hilarious. Let's talk about that in this video. All right, welcome back, welcome back, welcome back. James Toney, former cruiserweight, heavyweight, bunch of weight class champion, gave an interview to ES News, Ellie Sethback, where actually Ellie Sethback asked some questions while James Toney was training what looked to be an amateur fighter, right? Coming into the gym, which was Buddy McGirt's gym, looking for a workout. Looked like just a regular guy that James Toney was holding the mitts for. But James Toney was asked a question by about Leo Santa Cruz and Gervonta Davis. And he says, hey, man, who do you think is going to win the fight? And he says, he's like, what? He's like, what? It's going to be murder. He's like, it's going to be a murder. That's what he's like, oh, for who? For who? And he says, man, not Leo Santa Cruz. Which is my response to the whole thing, man. Leo Santa Cruz is gonna get bopped, okay? Now, James Toney didn't give specific reasons for why he thought Leo Santa Cruz was going to get destroyed by Gervonta Davis. But just to tell you how convinced he is about it, if you listen to the interview, he's asked two questions. He's asked that same question about two fights. When he was asked about Gervonta Davis and Leo Santa Cruz, he says, "You're done." right? It's done. No chance. Get out of here. Then the next fight, he was like, he picked Danny Garcia to beat Errol Spence Jr. But the reason he gave for it was like, it didn't have anything to. He had a reason for it, but it really didn't have anything to do with Errol Spence. It had more to do with people's perception about fighters that they believe, are undefeatable, right? And but yet have not proven that they've really reached that status yet. Now, because James Toney then started talking about himself. He's like, has he done what I've done? Right? Like, is Errol Spence Jr. done what I've done? And of course not, James Toney. Of course he's not. You're James Toney, dog, and you've had a whole career. Of course he's not had done everything that you've done. It's in his first weight class, and it's just what it is, dog. Not everybody's going to be going from 160 to heavyweight, man. It's just, dog, James, don't be trying to hold people to those type of standards, man. James Toney's a once in a lifetime type of fighter. Now, I'm not saying that Errol Spence Jr. ain't that type of fighter as well. I'm just saying that James Toney, we know what James Toney is because we saw James Toney's whole career go pan out, right? There was a little dip in James Toney's career when he lost to Roy Jones Jr. that people thought that he fell off and he really wasn't all of that. But what he did in the bigger weight classes, he continued to shine, man, and did impressive things. He and his win over Vasily Zhurov is one of my favorite fights, man. That is just a war, dude, from the beginning to the end. And it's a war that James Toney was winning. Like, James Toney was man, I'm not even going to talk about that fight. If you've not seen that fight with James Toney, go see that fight with James Toney. Vasily Zhurov versus James Toney. Incredible fight. But James Toney talking about Errol Spence Jr. is really kind of into himself. You know what I mean? That's what it kind of felt like. Like he knows the name Errol Spence Jr. He knows he's a big star. He knows he's climbing. But he's like, nah, man, that dude ain't me. But that's what James Toney does. You ask James Toney if he beat Deontay Wilder, he'll tell you tomorrow he can beat Deontay Wilder. And he literally means he'll beat him tomorrow. That's James Toney. That's James Toney. Leo Santa Cruz, though, Gary Russell Jr., nah. That was done. Like, no chance. Get out of here. And I agree. And I'm happy that the fight is happening. Happy. Last weekend, we had a fight that took place between Dillon White and Alexander Povetkin. I turned on the screen to watch the fight, right? Turned it on, watched the fight. Whole time watching it like, I have to watch this fight, right? Because people are going to ask me about it. I enjoy boxing. I love boxing. But people are going to ask me what I thought about the Dillon White-Povetkin fight. And I don't want to miss it because, even though I think I knew what was going to happen, because I think Dillon White's whole career it's just whatever. Alexander Povetkin's a 41-year-old dude, right? So anyway, Alexander Povetkin knocks him out. Boom, you're gone, right? And all of a sudden, I just get this feeling of great happiness, right? That has been carrying on for several days because of what? Not because I wanted to see him lose a fight because I didn't like him as a fighter. Even though I'm not particularly impressed by Dillon White as a fighter, if Dillon White didn't talk so much smack, I just wouldn't care about Dillon White, right? Dillon White to me would be like Alexander Povetkin. I just wouldn't care. Like he's a good fighter. I don't think Alexander Povetkin is the best. I think he's a good fighter. And because he's a very good fighter and a lot of these other fighters aren't very good, he can fight to an older age because these guys do not have the skill sets of a Riddick Bowe or a Lennox Lewis or a Evander Holyfield and those guys. Just like Larry Holmes said about the heavyweights now. He's like, man, Ken Norton would beat these guys. Ernie Shavers would beat these guys. Muhammad Ali would beat these guys. I would beat these guys. Just doesn't think very highly of his skill. Now, Leo Santa Cruz gave me the same feeling of happiness, but way in advance when the fight was made. Because I was like, you know what, Leo? You're going to get done like Mikey Garcia, but worse. Like, you're going to get done like Mikey Garcia, but worse. You're not getting out of that fight awake, dog, because there's nothing that Leo Santa Cruz can bring to the table to for Gervonta Davis. And like, I'm usually really, I hold off on predictions a lot, man. Like I believe I think Errol Spence Jr. is going to beat Danny Garcia, but I'll say, hey man, there's a chance Danny Garcia can win. Danny Garcia's got that left hook. He's a very solid fighter. He's got a lot of upsets on his belt. He fought very well against Sean Porter, fought very well against Keith Thurman. I think that this is a good fight, right? Leo Santa Cruz, what can I say about him and Gervonta Davis? Like, I've listened to people say that, I don't know if they were referring to me, but saying, oh, you guys have such a simplistic, look at the fight. You need to study the fight. You need to watch the fight. Look at all of Leo Santa Cruz's fights and see what his style is and see how his style matches up with Gervonta Davis's style. And then we'll see what the outcomes, then you'll see what the outcome's going to be. And it's a lot closer fight than you think it is. Now, far be it from me to say that I ain't ever been wrong, because I've been wrong before, okay? And there's a chance that I'm wrong about this. But I doubt it. You know what I'm saying? But I doubt it. Like, I had an argument one time with a guy that was an MMA fighter, right? And he was talking about how, this is the usual conversation about how MMA and boxing, like MMA is more of a regular street fight than boxing is and all of that, right? So we were talking about some MMA guy, like I think it was like Conor McGregor beating a heavyweight up or something in the street. And he was like, because the technique is there and the technique. I was like, really? The technique? Strength doesn't matter. Size doesn't matter. He was like, no, size doesn't matter. Strength doesn't matter. I was like, really? Okay. Imagine this then. Throw Conor McGregor in a cage with a chimpanzee and see what happens to Conor McGregor. You think he's going to armbar a chimpanzee? You know what I mean? What's he going to do? Rear naked chokehold the chimpanzee? Please. The chimpanzee will grab him by the arm, rip it off, and go on about his business, right? Now, obviously, that is a way out there example of what I'm talking about. But Gervonta Davis is faster. He has faster hands. He has faster feet. He hits harder. He hits harder. He hits more precisely. His defense is better. I mean, what is he going to do? If he was lucky enough to buzz Gervonta Davis, which he's not going to do, Gervonta Davis can move around on that dude and he'll never catch him because of his foot speed. I don't see this being a close fight. I don't see this being a close fight at all. I'm happy about it for the same reason that I told you about Dillon White. But the reason for Leo Santa Cruz is because of the videos that I have to make about Gary Russell Jr. Well, I don't have to make the videos about Gary Russell Jr., but I do make the videos about Gary Russell Jr. and Terrence Crawford, because if Gary Russell Jr. can't get the Terrence Crawford fight, who is he supposed to fight, man? The dude's not allowed to have a real chance at a major money fight because Leo Santa Cruz ducks him. You know what I mean? You know how many big fights? There's been several big fights that could have been made with Leo Santa Cruz, but Leo Santa Cruz said no to him and refused to fight him. So now that he's at the end of his career and Gervonta Davis is the big cash cow, because believe it, Gervonta Davis is the biggest cash cow below 135 pounds. Now, below 147 pounds, the whole lower half of boxing, Leo Santa Cruz couldn't make as much money Leo Santa Cruz couldn't go to pay-per-view against Vasily Lomachenko, right? Vasily Lomachenko and Teofimo Lopez are fighting, and that's on regular ESPN because ain't nobody gonna buy it. Gervonta Davis is getting his first pay-per-view. Leo Santa Cruz said, well, this is my big money shot, so let me throw it over here. That's my shot at big money. Let me go get it. When he loses, will he go back down there to fight Gary Russell Jr.? I certainly hope so, because I know that nobody else is going to give him a shot. So anyway, loved what James Toney had to say. I'm on 100% agreement with him. You let me know what you think in the comment section. And with that, I'm out. Double deuces. And thank you so much for your support, ongoing support of the channel.